There were a couple Nickelback songs that I mixed on the last album that had a lot of bottom end in the kick drum. We went and mastered, and I was just like, oh God, this is wrecking the mix. And my fix was putting this plugin on. Here's another classic. This is still, in my opinion, I could mix every record for the rest of my life with a DI, bass DI running through this. I don't need anything else. I mean, I like other stuff. I've got a bunch of other bass stuff. I love the dark glass plugin, and obviously the pedals are great. I love some of the amp sims. This for me, man, it just does what I want it to do. It has all the functions that I need. It's simple. It works because it's an Avid plugin. It has a DSP version. I love this plugin. I love the way it sounds. Does what I want. I use this for filtered vocals. I use this, I don't know if there's a song I've mixed in 10 years that this hasn't been on the bass, at least mixed in with whatever the other bass sound was. I'm sure there is. There's probably a couple, but I mean, like, this is just so part of the way that I hear bass in my, like, electric bass in a rock song. This on the SVT factory preset 30, like, this to me is like, done. DI through that, done. Obviously, like, that saturates and distorts and kind of, you lose a little definition, but it gives you this really solid bottom end and this growl that's like hard to do with a lot of other plugins. So if you need definition or if you need something from the DI, yeah, mix it in. But if not, done. There are so many great amp sims, but that Sans amp thing, it sounds a little fake, which is sometimes what you want. It's funny how we've gotten so hyper focused on making everything just recreate hardware in the real world in the plugin. That's great. I appreciate a lot of that. But it's also cool to have tools that, like, I don't want it to sound like a real Marshall amp. I want it to sound almost like a shitty, like, Rockman or like DI going into like a distortion unit, like just straight into the board. Sometimes that's cool for effects, and the Sans amp is like my go-to distortion box. This one will look familiar. I'm sorry for everybody who doesn't use Pro Tools, because apparently I think somebody told me they don't make a VST or an AU version of this. I told the story about how I got off SSLs and how I started mixing in the box based off of like a couple plugins that just looked and felt the way that I wanted them to react based off of what I was used to. This facilitated my exit from using tape machines. This is awesome. I love this plugin. It can be subtle. It can be aggressive. The different modes, like you can just quickly put this on and just hear the different modes, find the character, the curve that you want, and just roll with it. Dude, it's great. It's great. So if you use Pro Tools and you want like a kind of like a tape tube kind of saturator thing, like this is great. Here's another gate plugin. This is actually my new favorite gate for drums. It's called Drum Gate. Really unique name. So the Oxford Drum Gate, again, I don't love the UI, but it makes sense and it does what it's supposed to do. And the nice thing about this that's so great, number one, it's got a leveler built in, so it can even out sounds, which is great. You can basically run the track and learn all of the hits, and then if there's some that you got to go in and highlight and remove or add, it missed something, you can do that. So it's not like you have to automate it or like set the threshold to something weird and then automate the threshold. Like you can, it's almost like if you went and almost like made a MIDI trigger and then, cleaned it up after the fact. Like it's pretty cool like that. The other nice thing about it is the decay time, kind of like the Gatey Weighty, it lets you have a longer decay time for everything that's kind of in this frequency bell here. You can find the meat of whatever it is you're gating, and you can gate out the shit below it and the stuff above it. One of the cool uses I actually used this on recently, there were a couple Nickelback songs that I mixed on the last album that had a lot of bottom end in the kick drum. And it was glorious until like we went and mastered, and I was just like, oh God, this is wrecking the mix. I thought it was awesome, and it's just like, it took it too far. And my fix was basically going and putting this plugin on the kick bus and just basically gating the low end. So the low end would just gate out quicker, and it did the trick. So it's not always just about getting rid of leakage. Like this plugin's cool because you can just kind of tame frequencies. Again, I could have done that with FabFilter. I could have done that with a bunch of plugins, but this was just the one that I did it with. I think I already had one of these on it that was getting rid of some leakage, and I just adjusted it to kind of help tame the low end. So there you go. This is, like I said, my favorite drum gate right now. Maybe it might not be your favorite. Again, I'm just sharing you with my shit. I'm not trying to sell you stuff. Of course, I just said that. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Buy my plugin, 50% off at mlsoundlab.com. Sorry, my timing's impeccable tonight. Reverse engineer. I actually am trying to sell you something. I don't care if you buy this. I do care if you buy this, but like buy it because you like it. Don't buy it because somebody told you it was cool. This is, again, shameless plug. This is a plugin that I partnered with ML Sound Lab for. It's obviously Diezel VH4, in my opinion, is probably one of the best guitar amplifiers of all time. And yeah, call it what you want. It's so versatile. It sounds so good. It sounds the way, like, all the channels have a use. The distortion sounds the way that I like guitars to sound. If you don't like it, fine, get something else. But this is my opinion, so I'm sharing it with you. And so the thing with this plugin was there are other VH4 plugins out there. I have a VH4. I used one at the Chop Shop for years. A lot of my favorite producers, a lot of my favorite session guitar players, some of my favorite albums. A lot of people don't know about this amp. If there was a database of like music from like late 90s to like, I don't know, 10 years ago, if there was a database of like rock music and like this was probably used more than just about like any of those other amps, because so many of the session guys were using these, so many of the producers that were doing a lot of what we were hearing on the radio for like 15, 20 years were using these things. Aside from like, obviously, like, you know, Adam from Tool was using them. I think James Hetfield started using them. Yes, of course. But these are like the secret weapon to guys that you maybe don't know their names, but they've played on like half the records that you love. Long story short, it's a big amp. It's expensive. It doesn't have to be super loud, but it is super loud. There's just a bunch of reasons why I wanted to do a VH4 plugin that actually, in my opinion, sounded like my VH4, because the ones that were out already didn't sound the way that I wanted them to sound. They looked great. They looked like it. It just didn't sound the same. Didn't sound the same as the ones that I had at the Chop Shop. It didn't sound the same as the ones that Tommy Lee had at the Atrium, and it didn't sound the same as the one that I have. So I'm like, okay, I want to make like a plugin that sounds like mine. And if I'm the only guy who likes it, I'm the only guy who uses it, well, then it's perfect, because I don't have to mic it up anymore. I can go and fly out to Vancouver to work on a project, and I don't have to bring it with me. Like, it's just for obvious reasons why plugins are so awesome. Miko at ML, I annoyed the shit out of those guys for months, unfortunately. They make some great plugins, and when we were developing this, we got it to a point where I think everybody thought it was good to go, and I was like, it's not quite there yet. And there were a bunch of things that kind of is like, yeah, it sounds really good, it's really usable, but I know everybody says this, but it's the truth. Like, we took this to where I think most plugin companies would have put it out, and I was definitely getting pressure to like sign off, and I'm like, no, it's not there yet. And we took it even closer. So is it 100% authentic? If you scoped it, it's gonna get really, really close. Blind, really damn close. In a track, indistinguishable. I've used this plugin all over stuff that you guys have already heard, and that people have commented how great the guitars sound. So again, shameless plug, but even if this had somebody else's name on it, if it was somebody else's, I'd be saying the same thing.